Welcome to the You Can Make a Living in the Music Industry podcast from Nashville, Tennessee. I am your host, John Martin Keith. Celebrities, working class musicians, and people who work behind the scenes in all areas of the music industry will share their stories, encourage you, and give practical advice of ways you can make a living doing what you love in the music industry. This episode is brought to you by Edenbrook Productions. Edenbrook Productions is the company I founded to help musicians grow in their craft. Are you a songwriter, but maybe you've been told your songs aren't quite there yet? Or are your songs ready, but you don't feel stage ready? Or maybe music is your passion, but you feel imprisoned by your day job and you don't know what to do next to make your dream a reality? Well, Edenbrook Productions is here to help. We offer consulting services via phone call, Skype, and FaceTime. And for the You Can Make a Living in the Music Industry podcast listeners, we're offering an introductory 1-hour consultation special. Click on the link in the show notes to contact me, and let's get you making a living in the music industry. Hey guys, welcome to the show today. I'm excited to introduce you to my friend Chad Segura. Chad is a Vice President of Publishing at Centricity Music Publishing here in Franklin, Tennessee. If you guys are songwriters and you're wanting to get your songs published and signed to a publishing company, or if you're wanting to work on the business side and work inside a publishing company, then this podcast is for you. So sit back, get a pen and pad, and get ready to take lots of notes. Hey everyone, welcome to the show today. I'm here with my friend Chad Segura. How are you today?
I'm doing great, thanks.
It's
How about
great.
you?
I'm good, thank you. It's great to hang out with you and spend some time with you and share your story and get to know you better and let the audience know about what you do. So you work for Centricity Music Publishing.
Yes.
Here in Franklin, Tennessee. We're just like half an hour south of Nashville. And so you work in the music publishing world, which is awesome.
Yes, it is. It's the kind of a little known space, I guess, outside of the music business, but very integral once you're in it.
Sure. Real quick before we jump into the depths of what music publishing is and how you kind of got into that, where are you from and kind of how did you get into music to begin with?
Yeah, I am originally from Salem, Oregon, so a long way from here.
A long ways
About
away.
2,500 miles away. And, I got into music as so many do. You just love it and play it. And I was more a vocalist than an instrumentalist, but just did a lot of stuff and played and performed and did stuff and did some bands and different things as a kid. And so I just thought, man, I want to do that. And I ended up coming to school. I was a music major in Oregon for a couple of years, but then transferred out here, found out about Belmont University here in Nashville, and came out as transferred as a vocal performance major. And then in that orientation week, when you're doing all your testing and figuring out, you have to do, all these, figure out which ear training class and which theory class and all these different things that you're in. And in that process, I realized, I don't like this. So I was like, I love music, but I don't love that. There were people all around me that were really good at that and loved the technical aspect of playing it and doing all those things. And I was like, man, that for me, that takes the joy out of it. And so I thought, but I love music, and here I am. I just moved across the country. Luckily, I moved to a school that also happened to have a music business program, and so I met with my advisor, and she said, you know what, let's move you over into this. And I switched gears from music on the technical and playing side of things to a business degree that focuses on the music industry, which turned out to be the perfect fit for me. So
it's interesting that you grew up doing music and singing, and then you had to move across the country and go to college for music to realize that you didn't want to do that.
Right.
I think that's good for listeners to know kind of right off the bat.
Oh, yeah.
Because college isn't for one, college isn't for everybody.
Right, for sure.
And maybe what you think you're going there for isn't always what you're going to end up doing. It takes that kind of getting in the weeds of the depths of knowing that the real technicality of certain things that like, I don't really enjoy this like I thought I did.
Right. And I'd been doing it.
And you had been doing it.
So I got there and I was like, oh wait, yeah, no, this lost its joy for me a while ago, and it does sometimes just take that.
Yeah,
that very thing.
But it's good that you figured that out towards the beginning of your college career.
Yeah.
You had a place to go and shift into something different that's still music related, because you knew you wanted to do music, but just not in the way that you thought you were going to begin with, maybe.
Exactly. So. And it's funny because that similar kind of thing followed once I picked that path, as opposed to being the on the more performing side of things, being in the business side. One of the things that one of my classes was obviously a publishing class, because that's part of that's part of the curriculum. And I had a great professor who is still there, James Isaac Elliott.
Oh yeah, I know James.
Who is a friend to this day. But I was all excited, and hearing him tell real life stories of, hey, yes, I have cuts on all these Stephen Curtis Chapman records and all these, the things that he was doing real life in publishing, and yet then he's teaching it over here. That opened up a whole new world for me. It made it seem like, oh, this is a thing I didn't even know about, and it seems really interesting and exciting. So as part of that, then when it came time to do internships, I did a couple different ones, and one was in publishing and one was in label, like marketing and that side of things, at a record label. And it was really interesting because I thought the one that I was more excited about was the publishing one, and that was a terrible internship. It was awful.
Really? Okay.
I didn't get to do anything enjoyable or fun. It was basically it was back in the old days. So it was like, hey, make tape copies of this, and backup copies of these things, and file these, these products. And so it wasn't it, and I'm all for it, man. In internships, you have to do work, but you also want to learn something, and I didn't really learn anything in that process. Whereas in my label experience, it was great. They were pulling me into all kinds of things, and I was helping speak into, from a student perspective, but they were giving me a voice into marketing campaigns and giving me projects to do, and even including me in business lunches when it made sense, and different things where it was like, oh, this is the thing. So when I got out of school, that's the direction I headed, even though I had thought that I had wanted to do publishing. Real
quick, I want to backtrack on that just for a minute, just to kind of go a little deeper. When you finished school is when you got your internships, correct?
It was actually part of school.
Part of school, you're doing intern. So that's like sort of built in. You know that you're going to have an internship when you're going to Belmont. Yeah. Like they're setting those things up for you.
Right. It was a thing. There were various ones available to us, and then we would interview for them and submit for them. And
sure. So as an intern, for someone listening that's thinking, okay, when I get out of college or maybe during college, I want to try and get an internship in music at a label or a publisher or something like that. What is it that you're physically doing on a day-to-day basis as an intern at the publishing company? What did you do there? So you mentioned a little bit, but just kind of go a little deeper.
Very different. Well, different than what we try and have our interns do, but it would be a thing like, and once again, this dates me, but it was many moons ago. At that point in time, in the mid '90s, there were, you were still, putting things on, not necessarily cassette, but we were doing things on digital audio tapes. So we were creating backup copies. We were also doing some things on CD as well, burning CDs at that point. But it was, and even that's archaic now. Yeah. But it was just a lot of things like that. It'd be like, hey, here's our master copy. We need you to create copies of these, and so you'd have to do it real time, which it was a slow process of making these tapes. And it's like, that's fine, that's part of what you do. Yeah. But there wasn't ever like a, hey, and this is how it'll be utilized, or any kind of real educational purpose to that. And then there was another thing. There was one of the projects I had was just they had a file room with file copies, so CD copies of all these things, and also print copies of all these books that songs had been in. Music, songbooks, and they were just piled everywhere, and it was just basically just put those on the shelves, on these shelves around the room. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, there were ridiculous amounts of them, and I would ask, hey, any specific order? No, just get them up off the floor and onto the shelves. Yeah. So things like that were just like, there was no rhyme or reason. It was just grunt work and for no purpose. Yeah. But normally, what the thing for me is, yes, there's definitely grunt work or the just monotonous work that happens in any internship. But you should always be learning something and getting new experiences. And things that would cause you to at least being around things, even if you're getting to sit in on a meeting here and there and getting to hear what's happening and
Yeah. So at the label internship, you said you were doing some of those types of things.
Yeah, no, in that scenario, that was much more, on the side of just, hey, here's this project. What do you think we should do here? And help us design this. At that time, once again, it's funny to think back to, the mid-'90s and what was happening. But, in Christian bookstores, which was the main place to sell CDs, because that was the only way. I mean, at that point, there was no digital music being shared. So it was all, you had to go purchase it. It was a CD or a cassette. Mm-hmm. And in those stores, they had big stand-up, things that would be, of the artist holding their CD, doing different things like that, all that kind of stuff. And so it would be speaking into that. What should this display look like, and how should we do, or we're doing this marketing campaign, or we're meeting with this vendor that we're working with. Let's go have lunch with them and hear about their products and what they're doing.
So you're getting to work in different areas at the label in the internship.
Yep. Yeah.
So kind of a little bit of a smorgasbord.
Yes.
Getting to do lots of stuff.
And just getting to kind of get a sense of what it's like. And obviously, in the process, there's a lot of, some data entry or whatever other things that you need to do. Great. Because that's just part of work in general. But I think for me, the part that was so great was not only did I have real things to work on, but I also was interacting with people. Whereas in the publishing one, for whatever reason, it was like a tomb in there. You're thinking, okay, it's music, but no, doors were shut or people were in cubes and there was no music playing and there's no real interaction. It was kind of like, okay, go off, do your thing. Mm-hmm. Whereas everything else felt more collaborative in the label side. So
yeah. So then after you finished up with those things and you're out of college, where do you transition to that point?
Yeah, that's, I had kind of decided, I guess I'll work at the label, and I actually went to that same label, to Sparrow Records at that time. It had been recently purchased by what was EMI at that time, which was just forming its EMI Christian Music Group. Now that has transitioned, now it's Capitol.
Capitol Records.
But so they had just purchased a few different Sparrow, Star Song, and then Forefront Records were all kind of part of what was EMI Christian Music Group. And I was working at Sparrow, and I got my first job was in publicity, which might sound similar to publishing, but it is not.
What are you doing in publicity?
Yeah, in publicity, you are, especially, once again, that has changed too. Yeah. But at that time, there were magazines. Right. there were things like CCM Magazine and things like that were actively looking for stories and looking for content, and then obviously there were general market magazines and other things that were doing that. We had a very active presence in Billboard at that time. The Christian music industry did. Not to say it doesn't now, but it was just a different time.
Sure.
And there were things, we had artists, that were doing things on national TV shows. And so publicity is all about just promoting those artists to outside entities that can end consumer know about them. Yeah. So it was great to learn about. I quickly determined that I did not want to be a publicist, and that was definitely not my path. I don't believe in luck, but as luck would have it, God luckily guided the process for me, and it got to a point where, maybe a year in, maybe just shy of that, my boss ended up getting promoted to head up the artist development team, which was marketing, basically. Mm-hmm. So she gave me the choice of staying in publicity or going with her, and I took the opportunity to try something new, and so went into marketing with her, which was great. That was all about more of what I had kind of done in my internship. So that was more focused on trying to let the end consumer know about the product. In that case, that's the difference. In the publicity is trying to just let them know about, here's the artist and here's what they're doing and here's what's happening. In this case, it's more about, hey, here's their new CD and you need to buy it. And so it's just figuring out ways to do that. That felt a little bit better to me. I liked that better, and I worked with, in both spots, worked with awesome, amazing people on the label side as well as great artists and some great managers as well. artist managers, that is. But it still wasn't scratching that itch for me. So about, another year into that, I was like, man, this is close, but not the same thing. And once again, the kind of the thing I talk about, often when I'm, telling people about just the path and figuring out your thing, I realized, just like I did when I got to school, there were a bunch of people around me that were super passionate about doing the music and doing all that technical side, and I wasn't. So I was like, okay, well, let me pivot and find what my version is. So then once I got into the business side, it was a similar kind of thing. Publicity, I was like, man, there are people here that are just passionate about this and great at it. I'm not that. This stresses me out, and it's not my thing. Then it got a little bit better in the marketing side. Hey, this is a little closer. But then I looked around at people my age that were like, and nearby that were like, man, this is great. And they're eating, sleeping, and drinking it. And this is just like, this gets them up in the morning. And I was like, yeah, I can do this, but it's not a thing that like feeds my soul. And these guys are going to be better at it than me just because of that passion that's in them. So it kind of just kept me on that search for figuring out what is that passion for me. And at that time, a new position was being created in the publishing company there at EMI, which is where, incidentally, I had also had my internship.
Oh,
so
really?
I'd had both of them in those places, and I was like, I don't think so.
Full circle.
But as I had some conversations and found out about what this role was and what it could be, it made me think, well, this is more hands-on with the music, which is what I really was realizing I wanted. In the marketing roles, and this doesn't mean that this is true, but for me, when I was in the marketing or publicity roles, I felt like I could be marketing or promoting widgets at that point in time. Because we were talking about a plastic disc, and it, even though that's not the case, many people that do that and do that well are super passionate about the artistry and the ministry and all the things that are happening. But for me, it didn't do that. For me, I realized I want to be more hands-on with the music itself. So I ended up getting this position. It was catalog development manager, which was just about trying to get into the song catalog of all these songs and figure out ways to monetize that. A lot of that ended up being what was modern worship at that time, because we were just launching worship together at that time, and we were just starting to work with all the. It was funny because I was coming up at the same time with all these people, with Chris Tomlin and Matt Redman and all these guys. We were all the same age and just kind of starting to figure this thing out before it was a thing.
Right.
And so I was grateful to be able to work with that. But then I also got to work, with a lot of other great artists. I mean, obviously guys that people that had already been there, people like Stephen Curtis Chapman and others that are on our label already and that we would then publish. So I've just moved from being in a role of being on their marketing team to now being on their publishing team. Bands like Switchfoot, just a lot of different breadth and depth of things. And what I discovered in the publishing side was, it's still work. There's still a lot of things that are hard, a lot of things that are like it's not like it's this, puppies and rainbows kind of, experience every day. There's a reason that it's work and that we get paid to do it. However, what I realized was I'm passionate about great songs, great songs, great songwriters, great artists. And so for me to be able to be in there and be involved on the ground level with helping get them created in the first place and then helping them find homes and other outlets and streams of revenue was exciting. And it also, I'm very ADD. So it's like, I can't do just one thing all the time. Sometimes that is to my detriment just because, it's a lot to track. But for the most part, what I realized with publishing was I didn't have to pick a specific lane. I had certain responsibilities that I had, but then what I realized was when I got done with these things, when I had them under control, I could then reach out to another area within publishing and say, hey, I like that, I'm interested in that, I could help if you need help in this area.
Sure.
And so, whether that was, we were just dipping our toe in the area of film and TV at that point in time, and licensing, and that was super fascinating to me. So I started stepping into that and helping out there. there are all kinds of facets of publishing. Everything for me, I look at it as in my world, my career thus far has in these. Let's see, I've been a publisher for 21 and a half years, I guess. I'm coming up on 24 years in the industry in general, but most of it's been as a publisher. And in that, I get to dabble in all kinds of things. Worship's always been a part of it for me. CCM, kind of radio songs, is always a part of it as well. And Sync, which is, film and TV licensing, songs for that, has always been a part of it. And then get to dabble in other things. We're working hard these days to kind of press more into the country market, and we've got some guys that are doing some cool stuff there. Starting to push into most of our pop stuff ends up happening in the film and TV world, but even starting to push into some of the other areas of pop as well. But for me, that's the great part, is that I get to kind of just be involved in all of them, and it's really just wherever a good song can live. And for us, it's we work with writers, obviously, first and foremost, but we also work with our artists who are writers. And so we have, and we can get more. I'm sure you have questions about publishing in particular, but I will say we work with two distinct groups of writers. We have staff writers that write for other people, and then we have artist writers that write for their own artistry. Mm-hmm. And so it's never dull. We have a lot of folks we work with.
And now you currently are with Centricity Music.
Yes.
And how long have you been here?
I have been here almost 4.5 years.
Okay. And you're vice president of publishing?
Yep. Yeah. So my role is just to head up the publishing company, and I'm involved in all the areas, but mostly oversee it. Our side of things, and I guess I can get into that too. Publishing is basically broken up into two. In its most simplistic terms, it's broken into two halves. There's the creative side and the administrative side. The creative side is everything working with the writers and working with the songs and finding opportunities for them and generating revenue and doing all those things. The administrative side is all the detail stuff that has to happen in order for this to not just be a hobby. And so we can do a bunch of really cool things and make fun stuff happen, but if nobody's tracking it, if nobody's registering it, if nobody's licensing it, if nobody's going out there and collecting the revenue and doing all that stuff, then we don't have a business. So I oversee it all, but we don't do any of the admin in-house, other than we have someone on our team that is our direct liaison to our administrator. But then we utilize, and it's funny, back to full circle. 3 years ago, I moved our admin responsibilities over to Capital CMG, which is EMI, which is where I started. So they do our admin for us. It's still a lot of the same people. I know those guys well. They're great, and they're, as far as I'm concerned, they're the best in our business at that. So that piece I oversee, but I don't have to be into the weeds in it. Mm-hmm. I deal with it as far as just making sure everything is flowing the way it needs to be, and if there are issues, I'll speak into it or flag things for them. But they're great at what they do. Yeah. And so for us and our team, we're all about trying to just find talent, find songs, because sometimes it's not we work in two ways. We have writers that are signed to us in those two buckets that I mentioned, the staff writers that write for other people, and then the artist writers. But then we also do a decent amount of single song agreements where we just identify a song out there that we're like, hey, we think we could help you with that. We think we could do something with that. And so we'll partner with somebody on a specific copyright.
So how do you make that determination? Let's look at the single song agreements for a minute. How do you make that determination to decide to sign someone? Like, do you go out, do you hear a song somewhere and then you have to determine if it's not signed already, and then you're like, I want to go find this person and work with them? Or is a writer or an artist reaching out to you saying, hey, I've got this song and I would love to get it signed and be published with you guys? And like, how do you determine to work with somebody on that level?
I will start with the single songs. That's kind of a good entry point. Usually we'll become aware of it somehow. They're kind of the two main ways it's hard for us to just take songs from random people that are sending them to us
Right.
for a number of reasons, not the least of which is just for legal reasons.
Yep.
It can be dangerous to accept unsolicited music, which is something that we didn't ask for directly from somebody. And one thing that I just encourage people to do is, man, you can most likely know somebody that knows us, or know somebody that knows somebody that can get to us. It's way better for us to get it from a trusted source where they can vet it, because we know they're not going to send us everything.
Right.
And so, and even one of the easy ways to do that is, if you're a writer, you're most likely affiliated with one of the PROs. ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC are the three main ones.
Right.
And if you're not, then you should be. And then in that is an advocate for you. And those are people that we then trust and that will send stuff to us. You can send something to them. Hey, I think this would be great for this. And they'll determine whether or not they want to, risk their reputation to come to us and get those to us. So that's how you get the things from the outside. But more often than not, we either identify it somehow, like somebody plays the song for us, or we hear it somewhere, or maybe one of our writers is co-written with somebody, and they're like, hey, this writer's great and this song's great, and we'll want to reach out to them and just say, hey, would you like to work together on this particular song? It's a great way for us to try this. Sometimes that's all it ends up being. We just do one song together. Maybe we do 2 or 3 over time. But other times that then turns into something where we realize, hey, you're doing this consistently. This seems to work together. Do we want to move this into something more exclusive, where we have an exclusive writer-publisher relationship and you're only writing for us?
Right.
But yeah, those kind of scenarios, that's kind of how that works. The other way that we'll sometimes do single songs these days is if we do an event where we invite somebody that is an unsigned writer. We have various sync camps that we'll do where we bring in a bunch of writers, and we'll bring music supervisors in from LA, and we'll have people write for it. And in that case, it's mostly our writers. Occasionally there are 2 or 3 from other publishers, but it's usually mostly our guys, and then maybe some outside people that are unsigned. And in those, that's always the understanding, hey, if you do this, then we're going to go ahead and do single song publishing agreements with anything you write during this event. We do the same thing for a worship retreat that we do yearly as well.
Okay, that's cool. What about as far as signing a staff writer? How do you go about finding staff writers? Is it a similar process, or is it completely different?
It's it's similar in the sense that we kind of just hear something. We start hearing that somebody is good. Sometimes sometimes it'll be someone that we've known for years, and maybe they're coming out of a publishing deal, and we know, they're going to be available, or maybe they're already out, and so they're wanting to talk about something. But more often than not, it's just that thing of like, we catch wind of somebody that's like, man, we either are moving from we've done enough of these single songs, I think this is a thing. Maybe we want to do this on a more, formal and exclusive kind of basis. Or it's just somebody that you identify out there that you're like, man, I keep hearing about this person. Or anytime our writers keep writing with this person and anything they do together seems great, we should talk to that person. But, as far as a roster of writers, especially artist writers kind of are their own thing. They're writing almost exclusively for their own artistry, and that's its own very specific thing. When you've got staff writers, though, they all have specific skill sets and leanings toward different genres or different strengths. And so for us, we're very intentional about that. Just knowing, hey, how many producer writers, do we need? And are they different enough from each other to where they're not stepping on each other? And in some cases, you need multiple of one thing, just because you're like, there isn't enough to go around,
Sure.
So we need this. And how many great lyricists do we have? And do we have some great? Some people are just really great at concepts, just coming up with the big idea and maybe melodically strong. So it's just kind of figuring out that balance and knowing, okay, how much can we physically work with? Because it takes a lot to make sure we're serving them well, and then B, do they fit our roster? It's funny because those are on the technical side. Then I would add, though, most important thing for me, especially at this point in my career, is do I love this person? Do they fit what we do? And that's, when I say do I love them, doesn't mean they need to be like me. They may be very different from me, but there's something that's like, man, I want to see this person win. They fit our culture and our work style, and we think that we can enhance what they do, bring something. There are plenty of people that I love that I don't work with, A, because we just don't have room, or B, because maybe we don't fit what they do the best. We may not be the one that can bring the best thing to them. But it's very much for us, it starts super relationally. The bar, though, is always, man, amazing talent. Have to have amazing talent, or we're not even going to be, that's, people think that that's the pinnacle. That's the baseline.
Yeah.
It really is. It's like the amazing talent is, we wouldn't be talking unless we think, hey, there's something here that's, even if in its rawest form, there's something pretty special here. Then it's that next thing of going, hey, do they fit? Do they fit? Are they part of our culture? Do we fit them? It's a two-way kind of a thing, but I'm not quick to rush into long-term deals with anybody. Different people have different philosophies on that kind of thing. Have I missed out on things because I am more about, hey, let's make sure a relationship and all those things are right before we do it? Yeah, I'm sure I have. But I also, for me, I value the long-term relationship, and I want to be in business. When we enter into a deal with somebody, whatever the term is, my hope is always, hey, when the end of that term is done, we're just figuring out how to do the next one. Mm-hmm. Because it's working for everybody.
Sure.
Now, does that work every time? No,
yeah.
It doesn't. That's just real. But the hope and expectation is always that this is a long-term thing, and we'll get to work together for years and years and years, and everyone's going to win. Everyone's going to be better off for having partnered together.
Yeah. When you sign a staff writer, because the times have changed, technology has changed, and the music industry has changed so much that there's just not as much money to be made musically any longer, like it used to be, especially in the 90s. That was pretty much the pinnacle, late 90s. So a lot of people I've talked with that are songwriters that are published, talk about that there's no upfront fees that they're paid by a publisher any longer. They're not on a salary, so to speak, any longer. It's, you're just working, you're writing, and then you get the back end if it gets cut, and if not, then you're just kind of doing it for free, hoping for the best. Have you seen the industry in Christian music?
Yeah.
Are you guys, and you don't have to go into details by any means, but are you guys able to pay staff writers a stipend up front to be a writer, or does a writer have to be bivocational?
Yeah, if that makes sense? Right. Well, the answer to that is yes and yes.
Yes and yes.
The first one is yes and no. Sorry, I will say that. Yes and no on the do we pay them up front? Some we do, some we don't.
Okay.
And do they need to be bivocational? All of them, yes. And what that and that's, I'm really glad you brought that up. So the payments that are made to writers are actually just advances on their future royalties. So a lot of people don't realize that, and they think of it, as you even mentioned, so many people do think of it as their salary. Hey, I got this, whatever. And hey, I got a raise when I worked this. It's like, oh no, this is just us giving you your half of the money up front, hoping that we'll make ours back and that we'll all make money in this. Now, it's the best loan you'll ever get because you don't have to pay it back. I mean, the only way you have to pay it back is if you make the money. But if the money doesn't come in, we don't then come send collection agents, out to get that money back from you. That said, it's shifted. I've watched the advances come down and down and down. We have writers on our roster that have advances of varying levels. None of them huge because that's not how that works. And then we have multiple writers that have zero, and it really just kind of it's all negotiable. That's part of the whole thing. But
that changes as your success as a writer goes up and up, and you start getting hit songs, and that's going to change.
And honestly, some of the guys they actually purposely opt out of one just because they're like, I think this will be good and let's make money. And it works really well. They get to actually I say real time. It's not real time because there's a lag in publishing payments, just because it takes a while for us to get it.
Yeah.
But they do get to actually see like the actual benefits of what they do. If you get paid in advance and you've been getting in advance for 2 years, say, and then something big happens, and now you've got a cut and it's a radio single and it's a whatever. Radio single is probably not the best example because you do get your writer's share directly. But we'll say it lands in a movie or a TV show and it generates a decent amount. When that comes in, you've basically already gotten that money. That already happened, most likely.
Yep.
And so you're just digging out of the hole that you had. So there's something that's not as satisfying sometimes for people of like, hey, I got this big windfall. It's like, oh, good. So now I'll catch up, to where I am now already. And I've already spent that money. I've already done that. So that's part of the thing too, is just figuring out, some people need that upfront. Mm-hmm. I need some kind of a regular payment, one just for budgeting purposes and all those things. Great. I get that. But yeah, it really does depend. And then to your point about, the revenue, it's definitely shifted. I mean, we don't have, a stream doesn't pay anywhere near what a download paid, which downloads were enough of a hit for us because then people could buy a la carte instead of buying the album. When they bought the album, if you were track 7 or track 1, you still made the same money every time it sold. Whereas once it moved to downloads, then all people cared about, for the most part, was the single. And so maybe track 7 people didn't buy too many of.
Right.
And then now that it's streaming, it's a la carte. So it's still focused on whatever specific songs, but you're getting paid a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of what you would have gotten paid on a download.
It's ridiculous.
So, we're constantly, as an industry, working to try and get them, the powers that be to raise those rates so that we can make more on a per stream basis. But it's basically just spread it out. Now, the good news about that, though, is on the streaming front, the thing that is beneficial about that is the fact that instead of a one-time sale where you got your money back here, if somebody keeps listening to your song over the years, you do catch up to what you would have gotten if it had been purchased back here. And then potentially you continue to make money for years to come, even more than you ever would have, because every time they stream it, you make a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's just a different thing. It's more the long tail principle of revenue. But there are also, like I've said, there are other ways to generate revenue. There's CCLI for worship songs that are getting performed out there. There's the synchronization licenses when you get something in film or TV or advertising or gaming. So there's just, you're spreading it out. We're always trying to figure out, okay, what are the things? How do we generate revenue? We make some when people stream it or buy it. We make some when they play it on the radio. We make some when they, sync it, when they perform it in a church, when they put it in a songbook. It's the cool part about publishing is that we've got a lot of options. We don't just have to go, oh shoot, that recording didn't work. Nobody cared about buying or streaming that one. Well, if we believe in a song, we can go find other homes for it.
Right.
But it takes a lot, and so it is not what it used to be. Now, some people do really well, but for the most part, people need to be, if you're a writer, a lot of our guys are also producers, and so they're producing records for people, both on labels and independently. We've got people that teach. We've got people that do, just different kinds of roles in order to, kind of help.
Multiple streams of
income.
income.
I was going to say it's not even a side hustle anymore. It's just you've got multiple hustles.
That's right, and that's what the whole point of this podcast is for people to know that for the majority of us, it takes multiple streams of income to be able to do this for a living. Yeah. I know we got to kind of cut short here because you got another meeting to get to. So I want to thank you for your time. Real quick, as we just kind of close out, can you give a couple of bits of advice for someone two things. Someone who wants to get into publishing, on the publishing side of things,
right.
And then also for an artist or a songwriter who wants to get a publishing deal, right. What would you suggest to someone trying to get into either of those paths?
Yeah, well, the publishing one is a little more straightforward in that you kind of need to be where they're doing that.
Okay.
So even more than there's advantage for writers to be in communities where they're writing, and in towns where they're doing that. Places like Nashville, of course, and like LA and New York, and depending on the types of music, Atlanta, different things, all different cities have different kind of strengths, but there's value in that. It's not a must for writers, but I'll circle back to that. On the publishing front, it's important. It's important to be there. You need to be in a place where you can do that. You need to be willing to just learn and try, get your foot in the door. If you're not enrolled in a school, it's harder to get internships, especially at the bigger companies, just because of how they're set up. But if you are, for independent companies, even like ours, it is possible, even as if you don't have to be enrolled in school to get an internship. So you can find some places just learn and pour in and get a job that you can pay for, life while you're trying to do that. But I think internships are one of the best ways to just try and learn the thing and get your foot in the door and get people to know who you are.
Okay, that's great.
And then on the writer's side, write. I mean, it sounds so simple and silly and trite, but it's like writers write. And so I think if you want to be a professional writer, you need to already be a writer. I'll sometimes hear that thing of like, man, I want to be a writer and I want to do that. It's like, well, you either are or you aren't. And so develop that craft, hone it, know how to write on your own, but also know how to collaborate and find people around you wherever you're at. Learn how to do that. Always try and write with people that are better than you. And then there is that piece of, at some point, you might realize wherever you're at, I don't know, wherever you are in the world or in the country, you may not have the resources, you may not have the people around you to create this environment of creativity. And if not, then I would say, you might want to think about moving somewhere. And I'm not telling you to uproot your family and do all your stuff, be smart, be responsible, do these things. But I think if it's something that you feel called to do and you want to go all in, there is benefit in being in a creative community. Now, does that guarantee that you're going to get a publishing deal? No, there's a lot of really talented people that don't have deals currently. Doesn't mean, though, that they aren't still getting opportunities and finding ways to, monetize their music. But I think the way that you get on our radar is by delivering great music, like I said earlier, through a trusted source, if you don't know us directly, and then, us kind of starting to develop a relationship. Now, if you live here local, that is a lot easier. We have some writers that don't live here, but most of our writers live around here, and we can put them in rooms with other writers and artists any given day. But it's not an absolute must. But I think at the end of the day, and hone your craft, be excellent at what you're doing, and I think the things that I like to tell anybody that's kind of coming into this spot, what I'm always looking for is I want people, obviously back to that thing, baseline is phenomenal talent. You just need to have that extra thing, because we have lots of talent all around us that we still don't have time and energy to work with. Mm-hmm. So got to have that, and then you've got to have that work ethic and that the ability to just do whatever needs to be done in order to make it happen, because it takes a lot. You got to have a great attitude, because stuff is just hard, and you've got to be willing to just let stuff roll off you, because rejection is rampant. We deal with it as publishers. Our writers deal with it. It's just there's a lot of that. And then you've got to just be teachable, be a person that is willing to, not coming in having it all figured out, always being, open to the fact that, hey, how can I make this better? How can I be better? Yeah. Those things will serve you well in anything you're really trying to do, but especially in the creative endeavors.
Yeah, man, that's great information. Thank you very much for taking time and sharing with us all this great wealth of information. Man, I'm very grateful for that, and I think people will be able to take all of that and apply it to their lives and their careers, and it'll make a big difference for them. So
awesome. Well,
thank you, Chad, for your
pleasure.
Time and for letting me come hang out with you at Centricity Publishing. And I'm looking on the wall at all these albums and artists that you've worked with, and Lauren Daigle and Manifest and Jordan Feliz, and I mean, you guys are doing great work, and it's visible because, you know, Lauren is on #1 song on Billboard, you know, recently, and Jordan is all over the radio and Billboard and all these types of things. So you guys are doing great work. So thank you.
We're having fun, working hard, and we get to work with great artists and writers.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Well, it's great spending time with you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
It.
Thank you guys so much for joining us today for my conversation with Chad Segura. I really hope you were able to take all of the information that we talked about regarding music publishing and songwriting and figuring out how to put those things together for your career, and that you can take the information and apply it in a useful way. Remember, Edenbrook Productions is here to help if you need consulting services via phone call, Skype, or FaceTime. Be sure to let me know how we can help you begin to make a living in the music industry.